Hi there. I was talking to a couple of investors over the weekend, and one of the things that really came out of that is help us understand, Michael. When you say do your homework, what does that mean? What should I be looking at? So I thought what I would do is just bring out and share with you the model that I use, not because it's the model I want you to use. That's not what I'm doing. Just showing you what I've used and ask that this become at least something of a framework that you can use when you're starting to do your homework. So as always, we'll go through the goals. I want you to understand what I mean by initial homework and what are the things that you should be looking at when you're starting to evaluate properties in different markets. We're going to review the actual spreadsheet, at least a version of it that fits nicely in a PowerPoint that hopefully you can use and model to your environment. A couple of things. Obviously, I modeled this off of my California experience. I modeled this off of properties that don't have, for example, association fees, right? So if you were going to do a condo or townhouse and they had association fees, those are obviously expenses that you need to capture, right? Because all expenses need to be there. In the spreadsheet that I used, I didn't have any of those, so I didn't add them. Again, my experience is very California heavy. So, maybe in your experience, if you're investing in the East Coast or, the central like Michigan or whatever, and, snow's a thing, right? So I have to imagine that there's some costs with that. I have no idea what they are. Obviously, it's a relatively short season, hopefully for most of you, but there probably are expenses there. And truthfully, I don't know what those would be. So try to figure them out and make sure you model for those because you would hate to have a nice yield calculation because you missed some expenses. In this spreadsheet, I modeled property management at 10% because I had to have a number. For some of you, that might be too high. For some of you, that might be too low. Whatever it is in your market, change that column. And then the other thing for mortgage rates, because they're so different based on your credit, down payment, part of the country, all that stuff, I decided just to use a 5% interest only. 5%, at least as of this recording, is a little high. But again, I hope this video will be out there a long time. So just understand I used 5%. And again, model this based on your credit, what you can get from your local bank. So here we go. Here's the spreadsheet, right? So we'll go through each column. We'll go through some acronyms. We'll really treat this as three separate sections real quick. So on the left, right, everything leading up to total cash. This is the denominator in your yield calculation. So what kind of money do I need to put out of pocket, write a check before I own the property or before I actually start leasing the property? So as you can see there's a type that's just a description. Put the street address, put whatever you want there. It doesn't matter. Price, that's the price that in this example I'm willing to pay. It's not necessarily the list price because again I make lots of offers that don't get accepted. But maybe so maybe the first one, right, that's listed there at 127. Maybe the asking price was 135. Well, I'm going to do my calculation based on what I'm willing to pay and not some artificial price in the multiple listing service. Down payment, that's what DP stands for. I just assume 20% across the board to make it easy. You don't need PMI or any extra second mortgage or anything, so I just assume that. Truth be told, when you start doing this a lot, you can find creative ways not to put 20% down. Maybe the owner carries back or whatever. RC stands for repair cost. I sometimes refer to as make ready. It's the same thing. It's basically after I own the property, what do I have to do to it before I can put a tenant in there? And most properties do have something, right? Whether it's just carpet cleaning and painting or whatever. But this is one that you'll have to get comfortable with. It's actually one of those ones that can have the largest impact on yield, right? Because what often happens is you can get a low priced property. So maybe your down payment is artificially low, but maybe repair cost is 2x what other properties are. So model that stuff out because a part of your yield calculation is how much cash. And again, I didn't do this in the beginning. I naturally would have gravitated in the example I just shared to the cheaper property, not realizing that I was getting a lower yield on my cash because I had such a high make ready cost. So make sure that you appreciate that. Change the numbers, right? Change 5,000 to 10,000 and just watch how the yield changes. CC stands for closing cost. Again, find out what your area is. I just use some round numbers here. Again, I'm very California centric. I don't know if the East Coast or other parts of the world have different closing costs. If so, model those. And then that leads us just to a quick sum, right? It's basically the down payment plus repair cost plus closing cost equals your total out of pocket. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, now for the expenses, or basically the red section. So again, mortgage payments, that's what MP stands for. So again, I used 5% interest only, and just for grins, that's price minus down payment times 5% divided by 12. That equals the mortgage payment. Insurance is taxes. I used my best estimates based on my experience. These are expenses you have to budget for. You obviously don't pay them monthly, but I'm trying to do a monthly calculation. So figure out your yearly total, divide by 12, and put a number there. Property management, that's what PM is. And again, I use 10% of rent. In this case, rent is a column just to the right. But again, you got to put something there. And then expenses. So I used a number that you would budget for, right? You're not normally going to have expenses every month, at least hopefully not, but you need to budget for them. So just to pick on a different row, so the 3-bedroom, 1-bath house has $100 a month. That means I'm budgeting $1,200 in expenses. So whatever those happen to be. And then that's your total expenses. Again, just mortgage payment plus insurance and taxes plus property management plus a budget for expenses. That's your total expense. And then finally, we start to get to the good stuff. So you need to figure out in your area what things rent for, right? Again, I used rents that I'm familiar with. Again, these are not rents that run across California, let alone across the country. So find out your rents. That's something you need to do. So I try to use a diverse set of properties. So, is it a 2-1 house, a 3-1, a 3-2, all of that. So that's something you need to do as part of your homework. Then I just did simple math. I took the rent column and minus total expenses. That equaled monthly cash flow. That's what the CF stands for. I then calculated monthly cash flow into yearly cash flow, which is just monthly times 12. And then finally we get to the column that I'm always interested in, which is yield. So that's yearly cash flow divided by total cash or total out of pocket. And that becomes a yield. So that's what I use. Not good or bad, just what I use. It's something that people have been asking me for, so I wanted to share with you my model. Again, it's not meant to be perfect. It's just meant to be quick and really helps me articulate which properties I should do more homework on. So in this case, I would likely look at the bottom two because there could be surprises, right? Again, the spreadsheet's not perfect, but I would go look at that duplex for sure and figure out if I'm missing something, if I got the rents right. Are repair costs really $4,000, or is there something hidden? Then there's that single family home. I'd look at that one too. I might even look at that 4-1, but I would certainly look at the bottom two in this example. So again, this is your homework now. You need to go out and build your spreadsheet. I used to suggest looking at 100, then 50. I'm going to ask that you would do at least 20. I fully expect you to look at 20 properties and be able to articulate what the best deal is and what the worst deal is, and more importantly, why that is, right? Maybe one of them is artificially low or has a low make ready or has extra costs or expenses. Don't know. Probably the most variable number on that spreadsheet was rents. Every part of the country, rents are different, right? A 2-bedroom, 1-bath house is going to rent for a different amount than a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. That's on you. You need to figure that out. Then there's the property management fees, right? What is standard for your area? I again use just a flat 10%. And then when you really get good at this, you need to understand what affects yield, right? What happens if you have a lower down payment? Well, obviously your mortgage payment's going to go up, but is it going to go up disproportionately and make the yield look even worse? Or does it make it look better? What happens when I have less make ready costs, right? Same property price, same down payment, but one has a higher make ready than the other. Then there's, what can I do to raise rents? Right? Could I convert a living room or family room into a 3rd bedroom? Could I turn a carport into a covered garage? I don't know, but those are your things you need to figure out. And then never cheat on expenses or reserves. I've seen lots of people, and I'm guilty of this 15 years ago, where I just lower expenses until the property looks better. That's silly. That's Excel spreadsheet cash flow, and that never works. So don't do that. Find a number that makes sense. talk with other landlords or property managers in your area and ask for what the expenses reserves are. And if somebody ever tells you that there's no expenses, run away. That's just crazy. So again, that was it. Quick 10 minutes. Actually didn't change this slide. This should have said one rental at a time. But have a great day.